A few nights ago, Mr. Yee Jenn Jong spoke at the Workers' Party rally. He said that he wants to improve Singapore. And I agree with him. We must all be in politics for the service of Singapore and Singaporeans. But at the same time, this also needs to be done in a practical way that makes sense. Let me ask you, who amongst us would like to pay more tax, like to pay more GST? But there's also a growing need to look after Singaporeans. And all of us have families, we know from our own experiences. Social spending is needed. Areas like healthcare, education, caregiving, family. These are the building blocks, the basic building blocks of our society in Singapore. And we must get that right. But it also means that it is a strain on our fiscal resources. So what do we do? Well, the Workers' Party has several suggestions. Amongst them, they say, first of all, let's raise the tax for MNCs. Make MNCs pay more tax. Well, okay, this can raise revenue, but what would this do to MNCs? I told you earlier that MNCs provide the bulk of good paying jobs for Singaporeans. What if they leave Singapore? And with that, the good jobs that they provide to Singaporeans, will Singapore be better off or worse off? Ask ourselves that question. Another suggestion was to take more from the reserves by taking 60% of the NIRC. Well, let me tell you, friends, from a politician's perspective, this is not a bad idea. After all, from my perspective, it means that the government doesn't have to explain why we need to raise the GST to our population. So why not? It's not a bad idea from a politician's perspective. But from the perspective of safeguarding Singapore's long-term interests for our children and their children and our children's children's children, the multi-generation that you heard Sito Ipin speak about, would that be prudent? Would that be safe? Would that be wise? Because it means that our reserves will grow at a slower rate than before, leaving less resources to subsequent generations of Singaporeans. And also, what if 10% was not enough? What if 10% more was not enough? Then 20%? And what if 20% more was not enough? Where do we draw that line? So it's a slippery slope. And we must always test policy ideas against practical execution and impact that it will make on other people's lives, including future generations of Singaporeans. And remember, our friends, it was not too long ago when it was suggested that Singapore could also borrow money to fund our programs. We don't have to raise GST. Just borrow some money because the interest rates were low. Spend on the programs. It's very cheap to borrow. Again, ask ourselves, what is the impact on current and also future Singaporeans? We didn't borrow a cent when we went through COVID, saving Singaporeans' lives and keeping their livelihoods, their jobs. And that is down to sound fiscal planning, prudent financial planning, helmed by DPM Heng Swee Keat when he was finance minister. So let me ask ourselves, what if we borrowed money sometime in 2020 when the interest rates were indeed very low? But let me tell you, today we'll be paying interest rates more than 4 times higher than what it was. We'll be servicing the debt at 4 times higher than what it was. Let me ask it, is it prudent? Do we need to do that? Should we not instead try to manage our own fiscal resources so that current generation and future generations of Singaporeans all have a stake in Singapore? So a good policy is not just a good idea alone. There is a lot more that is needed to turn a good idea into something that can work well.